This conference will now be recorded.
All right, call the meeting to order. Brian, do you want to read the roll?
Sure, and I'm reading the roll as I see the signatories present, so if I miss you, please feel free to speak up. We have Ann Sullivan here from Mass DOT, representing Secretary and CEO Monica Tibbetts-Nutt.
Here.
Sarah Bradbury, representing the Highway Division of Mass DOT.
Here.
Mark Piamarini, Leominster.
Here.
Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Present.
And Phil Duffy, Subregion 4.
Here.
Okay, and that's 5 of a needed 6 for a quorum. I'll keep my eyes out for anyone else who shows up, and I see Michelle here as well from DOT. So, and we could probably move forward with the agenda as presented.
Well, we don't have a quorum for the minutes.
You hear me?
Yeah, is that Michelle?
No, Laura Schifrin.
Oh, okay, Laura Schifrin is here. Thank you, Laura. Okay, we do have a quorum.
Oh, great. Okay. Moving on the agenda to item 2, public comments. Is there any member of the public who would like to offer comment? Seeing none. Moving on to agenda item 3, approval of the May 15th, 2024 minutes as distributed. Could I get a motion on the minutes?
So moved. Schifrin.
We get a motion and second?
Second, Mark Piamarini.
Okay, any discussion or corrections, comments on the minutes? Okay, why don't we vote? Brian, can you do the roll?
Ian Sullivan, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Sarah Bradbury, Mass DOT Highway.
Yes.
Trevor Beauregard, Gardner.
Yes.
Mark Piamarini, Leominster.
Yes.
Laura Schifrin, MRPC.
Yes.
Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Yes.
And Phil Duffy, Subregion 4.
Abstain, as I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, we still passed with 6 members voting in favor.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 4, the statewide capital improvement plan. Is Michelle, did Michelle come on or no?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. I just have a question. I shared a copy of my slides with Chris a little earlier this afternoon. I would need sharing permissions to share from my computer. So if you could grant me those, or if you could, load my slides, either option would work for me.
Sure, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. All right. Okay, let me just get this loaded up. Sorry for the delay. Just one moment, please. Sorry about this. Is not letting me load at the moment, so I'm just going to try to adjust something technically on this end and see if I can fix it.
Michelle, I have it up as well on my screen. If you'd like, I can run through.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be probably more efficient for everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Scott. I'm the manager of capital planning at MassDOT and I appreciate the time you've given me today to speak with you about our draft 25 to 29 capital investment plan, which we have actually just made available online this afternoon. So you can are available to view and begin the public comment process. But I'll talk a little bit today about what the CIP, Capital Investment Plan for short, is, its relationship to the MMPO tips and state transportation improvement program, and some upcoming activities we'll have related to public comment. Next slide, please. If you could go to, okay, great. So our capital investment plan is our rolling 5-year plan from MassDOT that funds the planning, construction, and capital maintenance for projects for the Commonwealth's transportation system. And I'll talk a little bit about, do some compare and contrasting with the state transportation improvement program in a little bit. But some key features are that this is a fiscally constrained plan to the various funding resources we have for transportation, which I'll talk about a little bit, reflects cash flow spending over the construction or implementation life of a project. It includes a variety of investments, both of the types you'll be familiar with from the TIP and the STIP on terms of roadways, bridges, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and transit. It also includes spending for our state-owned rail network, public use airports, MassDOT enterprise services such as the Office of Transportation Planning, as well as capital investments for the Registry of Motor Vehicles. We organize the CIP and have been doing so for the past few cycles on 3 major priority areas: reliability, which is focused on condition and state of good repair; modernization, which is focused on making the system safer, more accessible, and making upgrades to accommodate economic growth; and then expansion, which really focuses on expanding options for transportation. And in recent years, this has really been about expanding our statewide bicycle and pedestrian network and our rail network. And then within these priority areas, we have a number of designated investment programs, which kind of serve as buckets for individual projects that may advance these priorities. Next slide, please. So just to talk briefly about some of the sources for the CIP, they include, of course, the federal funding, both from formula programs from various DOT modal administrations, as well as competitive funding that may be awarded. And as you all may know, there are a lot of expanded opportunities for accessing competitive dollars under the bipartisan infrastructure law. For state funding, a couple of different sources here. There's state bond cap, which is based on general obligation bond proceeds issued by the Commonwealth. And important thing to note about this is the source we use for a lot of matching funds for federal dollars. There are also special obligation bonds that pay for specific projects, such as those for the bridge programs or for rail projects as well. MassDOT also has revenues from the Western Turnpike, Metropolitan Highway System, and Tobin Bridge toll funding that goes back into those facilities for investment, and then also a variety of other sources that support funding for our CIP. Next slide, please. So I want to highlight some aspects of the relationship between the CIP and the STIP, which of course, as you all know, are made up of the individual MPO transportation improvement programs. So we incorporate the content of the STIP into the larger CIP, and that's what the diagram on the right-hand portion of the slide illustrates. Those boxes in green highlight that we reflect the federal aid highway projects reflected in the STIP, as well as the state funding that supports investments on the transit side. And then the remaining blue items recap some of the items I mentioned earlier that are also included within the CIP. And so a lot of the processes that support STIP development, including the decisions you all make as MPO members, do make up, or ultimately make up, I should say, a larger portion of our overall CIP. Next slide, please. So again, just to recap some of these points, that red box in the center of the slide kind of highlights what the CIP and STIP have in common. Both are 5-year plans that are updated on an annual basis. They are both organized on these shared reliability, modernization, and expansion priority areas. Both are fiscally constrained. And again, those determinations of project selection as informed by MPO decision-making processes and processes internal to MassDOT, such as the use of scoring systems and asset management systems to prioritize projects, all go in to inform these shared programs. Just some distinguishing features of the CIP: it is organized on a state fiscal year timeline from July to June, as opposed to the federal fiscal year timeline in the STIP. The CIP does reflect cash flows for projects. So as opposed to the TIPS and the STIP, which reflect when projects are obligated for receiving funding from the federal government, the CIP will show spending over the life of a project. So a project may remain in the CIP for a long time as it goes through the full stage of its construction process. And so when you're reviewing CIP documents, that'll inform the spending details that you see. And this document is approved by the MassDOT's Board of Directors. As of Tuesday, they approved the release of the draft for public review that's been made available today. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the factors that shape the CIP development on a broader scale. We've kind of categorized these into internal and external factors. On the external factors, of course, the policy and funding levels established in the bipartisan infrastructure law have guided the CIP development. We'll also look to fluctuations over time in funding from the Commonwealth and from our toll facilities. As we've emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, the toll revenues have rebounded, yielding more funding for supporting those facilities. We're constantly, reviewing and responding to changing travel demands, conditions, and needs, looking to the work of our partner agencies, both the MBTA as well as the MPOs, for informing what's included in the CIP, and as well as reflecting back on past feedback. On the internal side, looking very much at the policies of the Healey-Driscoll administration, including a focus on safety and climate stewardship, among other items. You may all be familiar with the work that's been done on items at the MassDOT level, particularly the Beyond Mobility Long Range Transportation Plan. This has some initial impacts on how we've approached investing for the CIP, but as you'll see coming up in the next cycle, we're looking to do a more wholesale realignment of the CIP with the priority areas and action steps captured in Beyond Mobility. And of course, we have a number of these other MassDOT plans, such as our modal plans and asset management plans, and internal performance management resources that shape our plan. Next slide, please. Just an overall timeline for how we produce the CIP. These long bars indicate that this is a very iterative process as new information becomes available. We're now in that final kind of red box stage of finalizing the plan, with our expected comment period for our draft running from today, June 20th, through Wednesday, July 10th. Anticipating a final board review of the CIP and hopefully an approval in mid-July. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a snapshot of spending within the CIP. That top table organizes the spending by major priority area as well as by division. The bottom portion of the slide on the right-hand side captures the CIP as a whole. We're looking at approximately a $16.5 billion plan for 25 to 29. And that's inclusive of funding for planning and enterprise services and Chapter 90. And the donut diagram on the lower left shows spending by priority area, with approximately 84% reflecting reliability and modernization combined. Next slide, please. So just want to highlight some investments in key focus areas for the CIP. Many of them in line with the Healey-Driscoll administration priorities I alluded to earlier. On the safety and asset management side, we're looking at $5.4 billion in our statewide bridge program for bridge replacements, rehabilitation, and related work. Over $500 million for our public use airport system, and another 144 million to complement safety work happening in individual projects, also looking to do some systemic safety improvements to help reduce fatalities and serious injuries. Climate stewardship, we look at this in a couple different ways, both providing alternatives to car and truck travel, such as by supporting our bicycle and pedestrian networks, our state-owned rail network, and RTAs and local transit providers. Also looking at opportunities to electrify, so that, as you see on the slide, approximately 89 million for charging stations near major roadways in Massachusetts. And then, of course, a component of that is making our transportation system more resilient, with 82 million focused in a highway resiliency program. Partnerships with the municipalities is also an important component of our plan, so that it reflects both sustained support for the Chapter 90 program, as well as ongoing support for our number of municipal programs, such as the Complete Streets program and the Shared Streets and Spaces program. Next slide, please. So I'll touch on this briefly. This is just a slide capturing projects included in the CIP for the Commonwealth overall, including improvements in throughout Massachusetts, but do want to move ahead to the next slide to highlight some improvements more at the central Massachusetts level. So you can see some examples on the slide in the road and bridge area, including bridge replacements, the ongoing work at the Hopkinton-Westboro I-90, I-495 interchange, the Route 12 improvements in Leominster, and signal improvements at Shrewsbury. One thing we're also highlighting is individual projects where we can in the climate and resiliency area, including upcoming flood relief project in Worcester. Next slide, please. Some additional examples include, in the active transportation realm, the Twin Cities Rail Trail reconstruction project, as well as support for, on the state funding side, for RTAs in terms of bus and vehicle replacements, and improvements for air and the Ware River secondary line plans as well. Next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit about our upcoming public comment period, as I mentioned, it does begin today. The draft CIP is available at mass.gov/CIP for review. I believe that the draft STIP will also be released today or early tomorrow as well. There are a number of different opportunities to share comments you may have about this document. We, of course, accept things in writing via email at masscip@state.ma.us. Do want to highlight we have a number of upcoming public meetings. The map on the right-hand portion of the slide shows the regions that we're covering and the relevant dates. I believe the Central Massachusetts meeting is on the 26th, so next Wednesday, and we'll actually be hosting both hybrid meeting with both virtual component and an in-person component at the MassDOT District 3 building. So we definitely encourage folks to come out for those events. It'll cover a lot of the same material I'm covering today, but an opportunity to hear from folks in your respective regions. And if you can't make that meeting, we cover the same CIP details in all of the 6 meetings, so we definitely encourage people to come to whatever meeting they're available to do so. Next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit about the document, if you're interested in exploring that, we offer it in 2 formats, a PDF as well as an Esri story map that has some interactive visualizations to help folks explore spending. The main document describes the details I've covered today about how we put the CIP together, with Appendix A talking about individual projects and Appendix B describing our investment programs. And so, the final draft that we're working towards for the mid-July would incorporate both any changes made between the draft and the final, as well as an equity analysis of planned investments. Next slide, please. And finally, just to close with a few words about Beyond Mobility. Again, this is an area where we're looking to do a larger realignment over the coming months for the 26 to 30 CIP development cycle, shifting towards an approach that'll allow us, to align with the themes and interest areas that came up during Beyond Mobility's extensive public engagement. Shift towards talking about what we hope the outcomes our investments will be. And the table on the right-hand portion of the slide highlights an example of how we plan to transition one of our investment programs to show these changes. So I really appreciate the time and attention today, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anyone have any questions for Michelle about the CIP? Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Agenda item 5, if you want to put the agenda, toss the agenda back up, is Safe Streets for All Vision Zero Safety Action Plan.
Okay, I'm not sure if our presenter is here
Oh,
quite
that's
yet.
WSP presenting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are they here?
No, it doesn't look like they are. I knew they would be
Okay.
late, but maybe we can circle back on that.
Yep. All right. So agenda item 6, the Montachusett FFY 2024 to 28 Transportation Improvement Program. Brian, you're taking this. This is something we'll need to vote on.
Yep. So we have 2 proposed amendments up for review today, and ultimately we're looking to put this out for public comment period. The handouts, they have letters to interested parties that detail a little bit about the process, as we always do. We have summaries available as well. So the first of these 2 deals with the highway side. And again, this is to the current tip, the 2024 through 28 tip, which is the active tip right now. This first one, we're calling amendment number 6, again, to the highway side, includes 3 projects in 2024, 25, and 26. The first of these projects is Fitchburg, project 608-189. And if you scroll down the handout a little bit, it details what the project is. This is the bridge replacement related work, Water Street in Fitchburg over Boulder Drive and North Nashua River. This is the one downtown. There's a significant cost increase that's proposed, approximately 79%. And the reason for that is additional off-site hazmat disposal items, utility agreements finalized higher than anticipated, clearing and grubbing increase related to those agreements between the utility companies, and as well as overall adjusted unit prices and some additional as well. I mentioned the significant cost increase of $14,872,340, which brings the total cost to $33,708,368. This is to the statewide section, so it doesn't have any effect on fiscal constraint within the regional target funds. Nonetheless, we'll have to amend this cost increase in 2025 in Leominster. Project 604-499, this is the project on Route 12, Central Street. We've discussed this in detail. This is what's called advanced constructed over 3 construction seasons. It's carried in 24, 25, and 26. We did detail this cost increase. We developed our upcoming 25 to 29 tip. However, we do need to amend the cost increase to the current tip, even though it's only a few months left in this current tip. So in 2025, there will be a need for an additional $7,988,367 amended into the cost. And again, this will be carried on the statewide section. Even though the majority of this project is a target project, has no effect on our fiscal constraint, the remainder is carried over in a statewide section. So no problem there. The reason for the cost increase is, again, additional hazmat disposal costs, additional retaining walls and bridge items, the addition of street lighting, and overall changes in unit price, in this case for pavement milling, excavation, and drainage. The final portion of this amendment is Fitchburg 609411, which is the Twin Cities Rail Trail, Phase 2 construction. This will see an increase of approximately 20%, bringing the total cost for this project to $16,808,785. The reason is because of overall adjusted unit prices for this project, and this is in federal fiscal year 2026. So again, we're looking for motion to release this for a 21-day public comment period. If the group releases it for a comment period, that would last from tomorrow, Friday, June 21st through Friday, July 12th. That would give us a chance to review this with the JTC and review any comments before our July MPO meeting before we vote to endorse.
Okay, so could I get,
Laura Schifrin. I move Amendment 6 as just presented.
Second, Sarah Bradbury.
Brian, can you do the roll? The vote?
Ann Sullivan, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Sarah Bradbury, Mass DOT Highway.
Yes.
Trevor Beauregard, Gardner.
Yes.
Mark Pamarini, Leominster. Mark?
Was he the phone?
I know. I see him on screen waving too, so I'll
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there he is.
Laura Schifrin, MRPC.
Yes.
Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Yes.
And Phil Duffy, Subregion 4.
Yes.
Mark Pamarini, Leominster. We'll try it one more time. Looks like we still can't hear you, Mark, but we do have enough to pass the amendment. So thank you. So we do have two amendments today.
Yep.
The second amendment, known as amendment number 7, this is to the transit side of the current 2024 through 28 tip. This is the addition of grant awards into the tip. So this was not a project. These were not projects that existed when we developed the tip. They do have federal funds, so we're required to carry it on our regional tip. So this is in relation to 3 grant program awards through the Community Transit Grant Program to 3 different entities, which are Gamma Inc., MART, and Town of Templeton for vehicle purchases in federal fiscal year 2024 through 2025. And again, the reason for the amendment is we would like to amend these projects into the tip. We'll do the same public comment period and come back and review comments and vote to endorse in July.
Could I get a motion to release the amendments for public review?
So move, Sarah Bradbury.
In a second.
Second, Mark Pamarini.
Brian, do you want to call the vote?
Okay, Ann Sullivan, Mass DOT.
Yes.
Sarah Bradbury, Mass DOT Highway.
Yes.
Trevor Beauregard, Gardner.
Yes.
Mark Pamarini, Leominster.
Yes.
Laura Schifrin, MRPC.
Yes.
Brian Croto, Subregion 1.
Yes.
Bill Duffy, Subregion 4.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brian, do you want to go on to agenda item 7? I don't see anyone has joined, so.
But we do have Nathan here, Nathan
Oh, okay.
from WSP. So
Okay, so back to agenda item 5, Safe Streets for All Vision Zero Safety and Action Plan. Nathaniel?
Yes, good afternoon, folks. I have joined. I want to thank all of you for having me here. I do want to apologize for the fact that I am not wearing a necktie. The Boston Public Schools are finishing their year, and so I'm dealing with the fallout of 2 half days for my 3rd grader, and I am broadcasting live from my unair conditioned upstairs room, so there is no necktie. So I apologize for that. And when this is done, I'm going to go do third grader things for the rest of my afternoon. But I didn't want to leave my friend George in the lurch. So I believe that I have to ask for control of some sort to share my screen. Is that correct?
Sure, you
Yes.
should have the ability, Nathan.
Yep, I do. Hang on here. Let's see. That looks good. Yes. Share. Yeah, let's do that. Yep, share. Come on.
Yeah, this didn't work with Michelle. I'm not sure why.
Try this. Site will be able to see your screen. Well, let's see what happens if I do that. No, I'm clicking share and nothing's happening, unfortunately.
Is it a big file?
It's no, I would present it from my desktop, so I wouldn't be sending anything.
So
But do you want, is it something you can email to Brian?
So Nathan, I do have it here, and we had a problem with the previous presentation as well with sharing, but I do have it on my screen. If you'd like, I could run through this.
All right, if you want to pop it up, that's fine, not a problem. I'll just hit cancel.
I believe it was in the handouts, but maybe it's not. Let me.
Yes, you would have received it from us. It would have been on an email. Well, that's the PDF. Yeah, that's going to be a problem because you only have the PDF, and that's going to look lousy.
So you have a presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to try to
Let me
send
try
it
to
to Brian?
make you a presenter again. See if that works.
All right, let's try. Yeah.
Okay, you should have the capability.
You're right. So I'm.
It says you're now the presenter.
So if you screen share and this is GoToMeeting, so it's a little bit different than.
No, I can see it. It's saying share. I click the share button. Are you seeing anything? What are you guys seeing of me right now?
So you might
Nothing,
have
right?
to click through the apps. Sometimes it'll ask you which app or if you could share your whole screen. That's the prompt, at least that I see when I share.
Okay. Well, I'm asking to share entire screen.
And I'm looking for the presentation as well. So maybe I can pull it up.
How's that?
Well, we don't see, there's the present. If you click on
Yeah.
that, it should come up.
Your screen. Yep. Okay, that works.
All right, terrific. There we go. Okay, so I'll give you the spiel, and I will try to be brief. So I was asked to come here today by George Snow, MRPC's executive director. I just wanted to, before I start, I just wanted to say, as somebody who's done consulting for my entire career, I can tell you that as a good consultant, I always try and do the best I can for all my clients, but that effort is made easier when you've got somebody like George who is engaged and listens and is generally pleasant. So I really do want to thank George. My name is Nathaniel Cabral Curtis. I think some of you do know me. I think I saw Ann Sullivan here. I've known Ann for a while now. I'm the Assistant Vice President in charge of WSP's Communications and Public Involvement Practice for Massachusetts. Normally I'd be joined on this particular adventure by our project manager for this, Bruce Kaplan, but he's currently on an airplane going to visit his wife's family in, I want to say it's Buffalo, or maybe Syracuse. So it may be a vacation for him. It may be work. I am not sure. I didn't ask. But if I get out of my technical depth on a question, I can always bring it back. Today we're going to cover the Safe Streets and Vision Zero, which all of you are familiar with, the study goals and the outcomes of our action plan, the current project status, what we're working on, and where we expect to go. So that's really our agenda. So this is our project team. We call it the four-legged stool. MRPC and MART are in partnership on this project. They are leading this planning process. They manage us, the consultant team, and they will own the Regional Vision Zero action when it's done. We have a thing called the Vision Zero Action Committee. That is a group of around 30-odd folks. They are there to help us with their local knowledge, and they work through the detail with the project team. Then there's all of us, the consultant team. We support the planning process, we perform the technical analysis, and we write up all the reports. And then there's the public. They participate in this project. They offer us their lived experiences, and they also provide a reality check so that we're not, just kind of off in planning land, doing things that, sound great on paper but don't have much of a bearing on reality. So many of you know these things, so I've cut this way down. Again, George said, you can spend less time on this, and we will. But just a little bit. So, the Safe Streets and Routes for All, the idea is to connect Vision Zero, equity, and climate goals. It's funded through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The goal, of course, is to get the money into the hands of local communities through their MPOs to do projects on local streets, not so much DOTs and divided highways. There's three sort of funding buckets, if you will. You can see there's the comprehensive safety action plans. That's the bucket that we're working with now. There's supplemental planning and demonstration, which is sort of an intermediate bucket. That's if you've sort of identified we'd like to work specifically on this space. We'd like to test if something is appropriate for it. We want to do a study of this particular spot. And then there's implementation, which is really when you have a shovel-ready plan ready to go. We've got our design plans. Everything is ready to roll. Additionally, there are some secondary benefits that are being focused on with this project. So equity, the idea of getting some of these benefits to traditionally underserved communities. Multimodal mobility, that is plugging gas, bicycle and pedestrian networks, and then using these investments to combat climate change through encouraging mode shift and reducing vehicle miles traveled. And then, of course, Vision Zero, what is this safe systems approach that's part of Vision Zero? The idea is that it's a bit of a departure from the way that traditional traffic safety has been approached, which is not to say that traffic safety as it's been approached has not yielded impressive results, right? Things are certainly much, much better than they were 30 years ago or 50 years ago. But really the safe system approach operates from the perspective that humans are fallible, humans will make mistakes, the perfect driver is not out there, and that the system needs to be designed with multiple layers of safety and redundancy built into it, such that a moment's inattention won't lead to a potentially catastrophic incident where somebody is really badly hurt or even worse, killed. So that's kind of an overall of Vision Zero, but what is the study goals and outcomes for this specific exercise? So our goal is to address safety problems that your region has through data-driven processes that incorporate stakeholder input, right? Very important. What are the lived experiences of the people that all of us serve? Equity considerations. Where are the traditionally underserved communities that maybe haven't seen investment over time? What are the best practices, right? What do we see from both around Massachusetts and around the United States? how do we balance environmental and sustainability needs with continuing economic development, right? You don't want to push the slider all the way over on either one of those. And then, of course, from that, the way that we really go about getting to that strategic goal is with some tactics, right? We want to identify investments for future funding in upcoming cycles, right? Either for that supplemental planning or for implementation. And then we want to make, what's a good targeted investment, right? What's going to be something that people will really be interested in, sort of at the federal level, right? What are they going to want to fund? It'll be something that really has the potential to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes, lower crash rates, and have a good equity aspect to it. We anticipate the following things. We're well embarked. We already have some shared values and goals, which we've adopted with the VSAC. The rest of these things are things that will come as part of the study. So strategies for implementing those shared values and goals, individual projects, prioritizing them, coming up with policies, programs and processes, implementing and monitoring. I think that's really important. At the end of this, there will be monitoring put in to make sure that the investments we're making are doing what they're supposed to do over time. And making a public commitment in the documentation to Vision Zero, right? Saying, all right, by X time, we will get to a certain reduction in, roadway fatalities and injuries. We're not quite there yet, but that is something that will come out of this process. So what have we gotten to so far? That's, again, a little bit up in the air. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of it. So we've really been working since February. Since then, we've hoovered up and mapped out 5 years of crash data, which I'll be sharing with you folks in a moment. We've met with the VSAC and adopted the guiding principles. We had quite the public awareness campaign. We had a very good public online survey, and we held a hybrid public meeting at the end of May. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I just want everybody to see this. These are the 50 locations where we either held a staffed table or dropped off flyers. This was the goal, to really get people aware of both the project in general and our survey, and later on the public meeting. So this kind of happened all through the month of April and May. I don't know if you can necessarily read the fine print on the screen. It looked a lot better on the big screen at Fitchburg State when we had the public meeting. But you can see that town halls, public libraries, grocery stores, YMCAs, councils on aging, those are the locations that figured big in our publicity campaign. We wanted to go to neutral locations that many people go through and just get the word out so that people would be aware of this process and participate in it. And I think we saw some results, especially with our web-based survey that ran from right about the middle of March to early May. We got 238 responses. What were we looking for? We wanted to really hear about what were people concerned about, what was their day-to-day experience living in the area, and what were their priorities. By the number of responses we got, the top 4 responding communities were Ayer, Fitchburg, Hubbardston, and Townsend. I think, with Ayer, Fitchburg, not really surprised. Those are 2 of the larger communities. And then, really after Hubbardston and Townsend, it kind of dropped off into the single digits. I was a little surprised to see we had 1 response from Waltham and 1 response from Southern New Hampshire. But that doesn't mean that those responses weren't necessarily good, because, given where we were flyering, it's entirely possible that we picked up somebody who transits the area on a regular basis for work and then is going home to New Hampshire or Waltham. So down the left side of the page, you can see the guiding principles which were adopted by the VSAC. These are, pretty much they're fairly standard Vision Zero guiding principles. We asked the public to kind of rank these for us. This doesn't necessarily suggest that we would apply these principles as, okay, well, the public said that livability and mobility is the number one, so that's our first cut on everything. But it does kind of give us a sense of the room. So for, as I said, when the public was asked to prioritize these things, they ranked livability, balancing livability and mobility as their number one goal. Then no user left behind and a data-driven process was tied at number 2. Getting it done quickly was ranked 3rd. Then we had a 3-way tie at number 4 for equity, broad buy-in, and educating people, not just designing around them. And then context-sensitive solutions. Now, this is sort of interesting because I don't know whether this is what happens when you make people try to rank, these things, and there's 238 people ranking them, and there's 7 things to rank, or people just didn't quite understand what the term context-sensitive solution meant. But as I go to the next slide, I'm sorry, that's one more slide. But in a slide or two, you'll see that when people wrote their comments, they actually have a lot of concern about making sure that the solutions that we build fit the communities we put them in. Our top 4 comment hotspots. So people were able to drop these pins onto a map of the region. And by far and away, the pins that people dropped the most of were a dangerous intersection and dangerous roadway segment. And so you can see, again, Ayer, Fitchburg, and Hubbardston, which were in our top responding communities, and then Westminster as well. One of the things you'll see in the maps that I'll show you in just a few slides, again, it's not one-to-one, but one thing that I'm really pleased about as the public involvement guy is that when I looked at the maps of crashes, you can see that Ayer and Fitchburg and Hubbardston and Westminster to a slightly lesser extent, but all of these communities do light up with their own accident clusters as well. So what's good about that is that the community and the data, they seem to be in pretty good alignment, which is a great sort of starting basis for making some decisions. It would have made me really very concerned if those two things were, streets apart. No pun intended. It's hot in here. So then, at the end of the survey, we asked people, how do you get around normally and how would you prefer to get around? So the majority of people who, responded, again, we didn't force any question as, oh, you must answer this or the survey won't advance. But of those people who answered that question, 106 chose to, they travel by car, which came as no shock. This is the United States after all. And of those 39%, they're fine. They are happy behind the wheel. They would rather keep it that way. Interestingly, and I want you to hang on to that 27% would rather walk number, but you've got a reasonable number of people who would rather be doing something else. 16 would rather be on transit, 16% would rather bike, 27% would rather walk. And then we asked people, hey, if there's one thing that you could tell us that's really kind of an issue for you, what do you want us to know as we embark on this thing? We got a lot of key comment themes. So people are really bothered by the condition of the roads in the study area. Rural, urban, they said there's so many bumps and so many lumps that people are swerving in and out of each other's paths to avoid those bumps. Narrow roads, winding roads with limited visibility, a lot of concern about that. People feel uncomfortable around large trucks, particularly around warehouses. Remember, I told you to keep your eye on the 27%, this lack of pedestrian infrastructure. People are like, I don't have a sidewalk. I don't have a crosswalk. I'd love a pedestrian crossing signal, RRFB, rectangular rapidly flashing beacon. So that seems to me to be an interesting opportunity right there. And then questions about, Route 2A. Is it a local road? Is it a highway? And, some of our VZAC members and MRPC staff even said, one of the issues with the roads in our region is that the transition between urban and rural can happen extremely quickly. And Route 2A appears to have some places where that happens, just in the snap of a finger. And then again, back to that, isn't it funny that they ranked context-sensitive solutions last? Solutions need to fit the environment. And George, you probably see it from, and Brian as well, you'll probably see it from me. We actually got a comment in through our special email address where somebody from Shirley wrote in quite a lengthy comment specifically on solutions needing to fit the environment. So that theme is alive and well, regardless of how it got ranked. So now let's turn to the technical side of things. The 5-year window for crash analysis was January 2019 to December 2023. During that time, you can see there were just over 4,000 total crashes that involved an injury. That works out to about 2.3 injury crashes per day. You're going to hear me use this term, KSI crashes. So a fatal crash is coded as K, SI is coded as serious injury. So that works out. So at 469, that works out to being every 4 days there's a collision that changes at least one life, right? Because sometimes there's multiple people in the car. That's about 2.5% of all crashes fall in that KSI bucket. If you look at breaking that down a little bit further, there were 52 fatal crashes, so about 10.4 fatal crashes per year. Many more serious injury crashes, about 83.6 or approximately 2%. So that just gives you some sense of what these KSI crashes are doing. I will just note that that 2019 to December 2023 period, it does include COVID. But what we found in looking at all these things is that, while during COVID we saw the volumes go way down, speeds went way up. So it in terms of accidents and severe accidents that may have killed or injured somebody, it kind of washes out. Come on. So where are these things happening and who are they happening to? So on roadway segments or corridors, over 80% of KSI events take place on two-way undivided roadways. So that's either a street, your normal two-way street, or something that just has a yellow line down the middle. Not a divided highway, something that doesn't have a guardrail or a barrier. If it's at an intersection, 44% are at an intersection without formal control, so no signs, no lights. 34% feature a stop sign, and 14% are at a signal. So the vast majority of KSI events involve a vehicle, either striking another vehicle or an object. And again, not a surprise, given how many people are getting around by car, that drivers and their occupants represent the vast bulk of those KSI crash victims. Conversely, what you see is that when you look at the vulnerable road users, that is, and I would just note that while this says pedestrians and cyclists, vulnerable road users include senior citizens on mobility devices, folks using wheelchairs. It even includes people who, farmers transiting between fields on agricultural equipment that typically moves much slower than the average road vehicle. So it's not just pedestrians and bicyclists. But in this case, we do have the figures for pedestrians and cyclists. And so what you can see here is that when it comes to these KSI events, for their share of kind of overall things moving on the road, you see that pedestrians and cyclists are bearing a disproportionate amount of KSI events. So really what you can see here is this isn't kind of a cars versus everybody else event. This is, if we were to make some improvements, everybody would gain. And then if any, this is kind of, I always say this feels like if you had any first responder in your family, this is what they would tell you. Some of this stuff is sadly predictable, right? So in around 10% of these crashes, somebody was impaired. So drinking and driving is bad. And then safety devices are worth it. So a quarter of KSI events involve vehicle operators who did not or failed to use their seatbelt the right way. So seatbelts, still basic, but still way worth it. If you look at who's getting hurt, it's kind of younger adults, people in that first, you'd almost call it the prime of life. But then you can see there's, people on either side of that are reasonable percentages as well. So that's, under the age of 20. So that's young kids. And then senior citizens as well, who are often the passengers of somebody who's in that 20 to 34 age bracket. So this is looking at it visually. So you can really see this is all of the KSI events mapped out across the study area. And really, with the exception of Petersham, there's no community that isn't touched by at least one of these things, which isn't to say that nobody failed to trade any paint in Petersham. It just means that there weren't any KSI events. This map kind of intuitively makes sense, not only from some of what we saw in the survey, but if you just think about where do we have what going on? Fitchburg, Leominster, Ayr, Devons, places where you have lots of things going on. Somewhere that's a little more rural, like an Ashburnham or an Ashby, there's a little bit less of it. But someplace like a Townsend, where you have routes that are taking people on into New Hampshire, well, look at that. You have clusters there as well. So this graphic, it helps to plot everything out, and it definitely kind of, it gives you some measure of comfort with what we heard from the public, I think. This is where we start to break it down. Again, VRU, vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, folks using mobility aids. Again, you can kind of start to see a pattern emerging. This is, you can see in the cities where folks are more likely to be cycling or walking, you start to see some of these VRU clusters. And then if you break it out further, so this is by pedestrian, right? And that really tends to cluster on the cities, even though you can still see some kind of spread out into some of the less dense areas. You look at bicycles, clustered on the cities, but you can also see that there's definitely some crashes that look like that's probably somebody who was out, hey, I do 50 miles on a Saturday morning for fun. And then, we heard some concerns both in the survey and from some of the VZAC members, concerns about large trucks. And this isn't to say that we wouldn't, try to, ameliorate any conditions. But the good news is that at least in the 5 years that we were looking at, relatively small number of KSI events, only 2 fatalities and only 14 serious injuries involving large trucks within the study area. So at least that's, it doesn't suggest that there's some sort of epidemic of truck crashes out there, which is a good thing. So what are we working on right now, and where are we going from here? So we're currently working on the literature review and the high injury network. We anticipate completing both of those things and putting them into George's hands and Brian's hands, next month, and kind of working to go back and forth and fine tune those things such that we can, come to agreement on those and begin using them. The literature review, it's a look both, again, nationally. As you can see, we've got a Vision Zero plan from Kansas City and from Omaha. And we're looking at all sorts of aspects of the plan, but we're also looking at, the existing framework within your own long-range transportation plan, right? So it's a high injury crash network, it's the crash weighting, it's how did people do equity, how are they monitoring their progress, to make sure that we're pulling in all the best practices to give you the best plan that we can. And I keep talking about this high injury network. Well, what is it? So this is it's a retrospective tool, right? It's based on that 5-year crash history. Why did we go back and look at it? So what we do is we apply weighting to all of those accidents, crashes rather, that we saw, and we assign them a risk score based on their severity. And so what it does is it allows us to begin developing a network where, rather than we're just trying to kind of broadcast, okay, we're going to try and make everything better everywhere. It lets us say, okay, now we have an understanding of where the crashes are happening, what's the frequency, what's the severity, and where can we make targeted investments that will really do us the most good. And this is the weighting score that we've adopted with MRPC and MART and the VZAC. So as you can see, basically each kind of event has an applied score. So it seems a little grim stating it this way, but depending on the type of event that happens, a certain number of points is assigned. So if there's a fatality, that's 21 points in the weighting system, and that goes all the way down to a property damage only. So you can see, a serious injury is 10 points, and then, the number of points assigned for the event goes down dramatically after that. So again, we're really trying to weight those KSI events very strongly and go after them and assume that, minor injury, possible injury, okay, those things are not great, but they're certainly not fatal or serious. And then property damage, paint's going to get traded. It's going to happen. Our goal is to try to deal with, the worst. So what are we doing? What are our next steps? So right now we're working to finalize the high injury network. We're performing the systemic analysis. We are going to generate the high risk network, which is a predictive tool. We're going to review all that with the VZAC and MRPC leadership. This fall, we'll be doing the equity analysis. We're actually going to start to get into the prioritization model and the policy ideas. And we will be having a second public meeting. I would encourage all of you that are part of this. We put the information out. I know our partners put the information out. Fitchburg State helped put us out. MART helped put it out for us. If you're on the MRPC mailing list, please broadcast this. Public input is important. Public buy-in is important. These things go so much better when the community is built in from the beginning. The thing that always makes me facepalm is when you've had a public process that's been inclusive from the beginning, and then you finally start to get discrete projects out of it, and people come out of the woodwork saying, well, I had no idea. And you get resistance, and things bog down. So please help be project ambassadors for this if you can. So I hope that gives you some sense of where we are. that is our last slide. I will stop sharing and I will take any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for Nate?
It's nice to see you, Ann.
Nice to see you too, Nate. Yeah, it looks like a lot of work. You guys have done a lot, and look forward to seeing kind of the final prioritized rate, kind of rated or weighted.
Yeah, we're close. I think, as I said, I think, and when I said July, and you're aware, and the actual date that we have might be a little sooner. But we wanted to make sure that if somebody decided they, had to take time off or something like that, that we weren't lying to anybody. So you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Yes, George.
Yes, I would just like to add that WSP and Nate have been very good with this process. They've
Thank
been
you, sir.
very open to all our ideas and needs for the region, and I think that's reflected in the survey, results of the survey, as well as development of the survey. The survey, we did a couple of different iterations of that before we sent it out, and we really went through a good and detailed process to get the right survey. And I'm looking forward with the crash analysis, with the safety analysis. We're really getting into the nitty gritty of it and looking at every aspect that we could possibly look at to be sure we get the right network that we need so we can get the right projects that we need. And they've been listened very well. They've come to the region and really gone through the region as you saw with the outreach and the number of places they went to drop off flyers, to distribute surveys. I went to several sites where they went to and visited with the surveyors as they were passing them out. I wish I had some photos. I did take some photos. I wish I would have showed them at this presentation, but maybe next time, or I'll get a handout or something. But they were very, very enthusiastic about talking about the survey with people and the project as well. So I really appreciate their efforts, and I'm glad we chose them as our consultant because they've done a top-notch job so far. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, George. As I told George and his team when we were interviewing, my grandmother originally came from Fitchburg, so I feel like I'm being judged from beyond the grave, and I have to make sure that I do my best job on this one so that I don't get haunted. So
Your ancestry is watching.
that's right, exactly.
Okay, thanks again, Nate.
Of course. All right, folks, I'm going to go. If there are no questions for me, I'm going to go spend the rest of the day pouring popsicles down my third grader. And I will wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Take care. Stay cool. I'm going to go buy a fish tank for the 6 crayfish from the science class I just adopted. Pinch, pinch,
Oh
pinch,
boy.
pinch, pinch. Have a good one, folks. Take care.
Have
Yeah.
fun.
Okay, agenda item 7, MPO Memorandum of Understanding. Brian, you wanted to
Sure,
talk
yeah.
about possible amendment to improve membership solicitation.
Sure, yeah, and I can be quick on this. This is basically, I wanted to bring this item as a topic of discussion to the group. More or less isn't related to membership solicitation and more so in the sub-regions of the MPO. As it is now, our membership process, and we're talking about signatories really, for the sub-regions, we have a caucus system in place, and the idea is to caucus within each sub-region. The communities would converse together and decide who would be the representative and the alternate, and who would be the designees of both the representative and alternates. You can see here is our list of signatories. The box, the table above, lists 2 signatories from Mass DOT, one from the Secretary and CEO's office. Typically, this is from the appointed to the Office of Transportation Planning. And this is typically the chair of this group. We have a signatory from the Highway Division, one from each of the 3 cities, Fitchburg, Gardner, and Leominster, and one from MRPC and one from MART. This is relatively easy to organize. They're either representing their agency or their community. There's not as much confusion. They don't have to communicate with other entities outside their organization or their community, issues and things like that. You can see the subregion reps listed below. We have 4 subregions. We created this system in 2011, and we tried to create the subregions based on geography and population. And the idea was to have communication between the communities and to conduct MPO business and convey their wishes and that type of thing. You can see the solicitation process at the end of our memorandum of understanding as it is now. Again, it's a caucus system. We wanted to gauge if there is a better way of going about this, and we're going to be beginning the process of soliciting members again. And admittedly, we have not been that great at this. We haven't had a caucus in 7 years, I don't believe. According to our MOU, we should really do that more often. It's been difficult to get a hold of different entities and people in the communities who want to be involved. So a few things I had in mind by including this are basically there's been waning participation across boards everywhere. We can kind of see that. We've been able to get a quorum for the MPO. I think every meeting for the past 4 years since we've been remote. We have seen waning participation in the last year or so. So kind of wanted to get out ahead of that and just make sure we have a solid group of signatories to conduct needed business moving forward. There's been some turnover in the past, and we're seeing some turnover currently with members who frequently show up to these meetings. It can be difficult to determine if a member is still part of the select board or the planning department, wherever they may come from in their community. We're not always notified of changes, and it can be difficult to get somebody to fill in for someone who's left. So before we start the new round of sub-regional caucuses, we thought it'd be useful to revisit this and determine if there's a better way to get representation. And that could mean individual signatories for each community. If your community feels it's important to be a part of the MPO, you can appoint somebody and have them represent and have a vote, or to keep the subregion system. But we thought it was a good opportunity to review this. So before, again, we undertake another round of caucuses, I wanted to get some feedback from the group on what the best course of action could be moving forward. And 2 things I had in mind are to either have staff review the MOU that details all of this process and possibly propose revisions to the MPO, or form a subcommittee of MPO members with staff participation as well to propose possible revisions. Obviously, after an MOU review, there may not be any proposed revisions, or the MPO board may vote down a proposed revision, but staff feels it's important to at least do the review process and see if we can get some improvements in the mechanism to get membership and hopefully avoid some future membership attendance issues that may happen. So I don't know if there's any feedback on that. I'm not saying we do this next month or anything like that, but it's just something that's been on our minds. It's, we're ready to start the caucusing processes soon.
So Brian, I'm curious, do you have set terms? Is it a calendar year or a fiscal year? Is it a 1-year term?
Yeah, we do. In the process that was put in place in 2011, we have basically 3-year staggered terms for each of these subregions.
Okay.
Again, admittedly, we haven't been organizing caucuses. I think the last one was in 2017. You know, the process has been confusing in the past. It's the one we have in place right now, and it does work. However, you know, before we engage the caucus process again, we're trying to figure out if there's a better way to do it, with the idea that we may not always enjoy enough signatories present at these meetings to conduct business. So we're trying to get ahead of any problems with participation and anything like that.
So when does the next set of terms end?
So the way we've been operating lately is kind of like a liquid type of thing. We haven't
Oh, okay,
conducted these caucuses in a while.
okay.
We know there's a need to do that. Before we do that, we'd like to revisit the process in general to see if we can come up with something else possibly that works better. The idea is just to review it. And I guess what we're saying is, before we come up with suggestions for a revision to the MOU, we'd like to invite any of the members of the MPO to be part of the process. So if there's a wish to be involved, we could create a subcommittee of members to discuss this and possibly discuss revisions to this, or staff could just review it and sort of present any possible revisions to the group.
Chris, was this anything that you guys discussed beforehand?
We haven't discussed it internally prior to the meeting. It's been a busy week, so I'm able to pin down David or Steve yet. But just kind of following Brian's lead, I think this is a great idea, considering there hasn't been any caucuses in about 7 years, and they want to pin down a more structured process for this moving forward, one that will engage more participation from both existing and soon to be new members. I think we would just kind of follow MPO staff's lead on this, and if members want to participate as well, I think that would be great. So it's more of a collaborative process, as well as OTP. If you wouldn't mind if I attend those meetings or updates, I'd be happy to do so. That way I can keep David's leadership here informed as well, and I can voice their opinion too.
Yeah, I would agree with that you would want something more collaborative. Just, it's nice to have the opinion of the members, kind of what they think might be helpful.
Yeah.
It would be also interesting. Do you know what the other regions do?
Yeah, so I have brought this up to our group that meets regularly, the Transportation Managers Group, basically all the other RPAs across the state. We've had discussion about this. Some of the regions, and we're all so different from each other, some of the regions have undertaken this process. A lot of them do have the caucus system in place, but they can sort of see the writing on the wall as well, just in terms of trying to organize this whole thing and making sure communities are talking to each other. And, we all realize that everyone's kind of here appointed by their community, and they have community interest in mind. So, they're not necessarily ready to advocate for a community that they're not familiar with. We want to make it easier for people to be involved. We want to make it easier to understand the reason why they're at the MPO and at these meetings, the purpose behind it, like that. So I think that's kind of the spirit of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that would be a good, I think people are more engaged if they really understand the process more.
Right.
Okay.
Brian, I got another. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to ask about on the screen under process, the original white paper that was established on the MPO role, makeup, representative responsibilities. Has that been revisited since 2011? And do you think there would be an opportunity to make that a little bit more engaging?
There could be, and this is part of the kind of bureaucracy of the whole thing. When we've done this in the past, for example, the last time we had the sub-regional caucuses in 2017, it was a bit of a struggle to get every region at the table in the first place, and also get sort of a concrete line of communication. So that's another reason why we would like to revisit this. And then you throw in having to do this with the amount of turnover there are on some of these select boards and the representatives in the communities. And it does complicate the process. don't necessarily have anything in mind right now, but what we do for the JTC is we ask for appointments from each community. And not everyone gets involved, but we do get appointments from each community. And the idea is that, if you want regional collaboration on some of these transportation issues, you would attend these meetings and appoint somebody to go to the meetings. So I think that's more the idea with the MPO. I'd like to carry forth as well. Get away from the sub-regional type of confusion and sort of have more involvement for those willing to get involved.
Okay, so did you want to maybe schedule a meeting? Look for participation and then schedule something?
So I can make a suggestion
Okay.
that staff will review this internally and possibly come up with some proposed revisions, which we would present to the MPO. If there's interest from anyone else to be involved, I know Chris, DOT, it would be great to have you involved. You have great input, especially Office of Transportation Planning. So we would involve you. If there's other members that wish to be involved or have an interest or think they could contribute to this, make it better, we welcome that. We could form some sort of subcommittee and meet and present these revisions if we do come up with some to the MPO. And again, the whole idea is to avoid some of the confusion that's built into it, make it a little bit easier. And the big picture is to make it easier for people to understand why they're here and what the purpose of the group is.
Brian, do you want to send out just an email to the members to say, let me know if you're interested? Definitely either Sarah or I can also be involved.
Sure, that would be great. Yeah, I'll send out a separate communication just to the members, not the whole mailing list, and see if there's interest. I'll detail what we're thinking a little bit more, and that way hopefully we get back to a meeting in July or maybe August or after that at some point when we talk about this, people have a better understanding of what we're doing.
Okay.
And that's really all I have on this. So if there's any suggestions, feel free to reach out to me and we can go from there.
Okay. So move on to agenda item 8 for updates for Mass Highway. I know Daryl, I see also Laura's here. Are one of you able to give an update?
Sure. So first I'll go with the 24 projects. We have 608-723. This is the Athol intersection improvement at Crescent Street and Chestnut Hill Avenue. Design is at PS&E. PS&E resubmission was received on May 7th. Environmental is cleared on the 31st, and we're just awaiting right-of-way cert and preparing documents for advertising. Next we have in 26 actually is a project 612151. This is the Athol Bridge replacement, Route 2A Main Street over what is now it's the G&W Railroad. Design is at pre-25. Preliminary structures report was resubmitted. Review comments were completed late last year, and we're just awaiting railroad on an agreement to begin our subsurface investigation. And the 25% design is due this October, on the 17th actually. And that's all I have for now.
Okay, I'll go through the District 3 projects.
Yep.
Leominster Route 12, 604499. It's currently at 100%. The PS&E is due beginning of July. Right-of-way plans have been accepted. We're going through that process as well as the permitting process. Fitchburg Water Street Bridge over Boulder River, Pan Am Railroad Bridge over and Water Street over the North Nashua River, 608189. That is at PS&E. The right-of-way plans have been accepted and the environmental permits have been issued. So we're just trying to wrap up the right-of-way before we advertise that. And then Fitchburg Leominster Twin City Rail Trail 609411. That is at PS&E. The Chapter 91 has been filed, getting through the environmental permitting and right-of-way. And that date is August 17th currently. And that is it for updates for me. From Mart, do we have any updates from Mart? I don't know if there's
I
anyone
don't believe so. We have no one from Mart today.
Okay. Brian, did you have anything from the MJTC?
JTC met last week. We'll meet again July 10th, 2:30, as we normally do remotely. We'll be discussing the TIP amendments. Not TIP, the JTC. MRPC I can take as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. We haven't had any updates. We may or may not have our July meeting. Typically, it's the first Thursday at 7 p.m. Remotely. They're still trying to decide. So if you're involved in the MRPC, be on the lookout for if there's a meeting or not. That's all the updates I have for MRPC.
Okay. Did you have any administrative matters, Brian?
Just the next meeting. That's July 17th, 1 o'clock remotely. And again, we'll be the business before us will be to endorse the TIP amendments.
Okay. And then from MassDOT, the Central Mass CIP public meeting will be held on June 26th, as Michelle had indicated. It starts at 6, goes from 6 to 7:30. That is a hybrid in-person attendance, in-person meeting being held at our MassDOT District 3 building at 499 Plantation Parkway in Worcester. If you want to register to get the to any of the meetings, to get the link for the meeting, you can, Chris, I'm guessing you can do Google Mass.CIP, and all the meetings will be listed, and you can just register. And Chris just put it in the chat. Okay. And then that's it for if we can get a vote to adjourn. Can move.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, Sarah
Okay.
Bradbury.
All right. We'll just go do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you very much. Everyone stay cool out there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.